Recording. So good day, everyone. We are now on the last part of our topic regarding on the components of culture. Remember, my last lecture was, I think, I stopped on knowledge, the different kinds of knowledge being practiced by a certain culture. I think we have the natural knowledge, and then we have the magical, and then supernatural, and so on. So next we have here is we have the norms. And when I say norms naman, basahin natin, it pertains to society's standards of propriety, morality, ethics, and legality. Some examples here when we say norms are eating and then talking, dressing, cooking, courtship, and child learning, working, spending leisure time, and some special occasions. Of course, when we say norms here, most likely it is the expected way of a certain person or being a member of the culture. You're expected to do something, diba? Norms is composed of different types or different kinds of categories. Pwede siyang folkways, pwede siyang mores, pwede rin siyang laws. Mamaya, I'll be discussing the difference of this one. Dito muna tayo sa norms. When we say norms kasi, norms is a general belief yan or general perspective or general part of a certain culture. When you say norms, it is somewhat abstract, but norms could be observed based on the action of the person. Remember, our own thinking on the way we act are based from our norms. So therefore, for us to look on the norm of a certain person, we need to look on the action of the person. Kasi the only way for us to judge or to observe, to observe a certain norm of the person, we need to look the action. Kasi nga, action is physical. Nakikita natin yan. It's not something that only uh, made up with our mind, but we try to act and people are trying to observe our own action. And remember, our actions are based from our norms and our norms are based from our own culture. So, yun ang norms natin. Pag sinabing norms is actually the same with custom. Parang parehas lang yan. When say custom din kasi, sorry, it is the way of behaving that is usual and then traditional. So ano ba yan? Sinasabi natin, it is usual and traditional. Of course, if you're part of that community, it is expected that everyone must act in accordance with the norm of the culture. Ibig sabihin, if you're part of that community, whether you are an alien or when I say alien, para kang you're dayo ka. You are a, pwede natin sabing tourist ka, dayuhan ka, regardless ng dayuhan ka or you are with, basta as long as that you are within that community, you are expected to follow the norms or the practices of that community. Kung bawal gawin ito, kahit pwede sa inyo, wag mo pa rin gawin from the mere fact that you are part of that community. Kasi nga, parang part na ng respeto natin yan. Ganon din sila. When they come in your, when they go in your own places, respetuhin din nila ang culture. So parang vice versa din yan. As long as you're within the part of that community, and that community has a certain practice or culture that you must follow, of course, you need to follow and then respect. Okay? And so now let's move on the different categories of norms. So it is divided into three. We have the folkways, mores, and then laws. So first one muna. So folkways. Ano ba ang folkways natin? It is defined as are commonly known as the customs, traditions, conventions of the society. Still, when you say folkways here, yung tradition natin, ano yung lagi natin ginagawa as part of our culture. Kasi nga, we all know naman that culture is started from family din yan. It is the family that developed the norm, and then sometimes these families are gathering to each other, lumalawak ang family natin, and after that one, nagkakaroon ng isang community. Diba? From that community, from that tribe man yan or kind of people man yan from that community, they have created a culture and that culture created a certain norms. And ano yung mga norm o ano yung mga ginagawa na laging ginagawa pa noon coming from our own ninunos, di ba? Coming from our own lolas, grandfathers natin, grandmothers natin. Ano yung mga ginagawa nila na hanggang ngayon that we are still expected for us to do as well, even though kahit malayong generation na tayo. Of course, example niyan yan. In Tagalog areas, di ba? People eat 3 times a day with merienda in the afternoon. So, ibig sabihin, in Tagalog daw areas, which is true naman, di ba? Uh, well, of course, this example is not based on me, but based on libro do, ha? So, galing to sa libro. So, according daw from that book, anyway, I have my own references at the end of this power. Ay hindi ko ata nadagdag. But anyway, according from that book, in Tagalog areas daw, people eat 3 times a day with merienda in the afternoon. So, all in all, 4 daw ang kanilang eating time. 'Di ba? You have the breakfast in the morning. Minsan pa nga may merienda sa in between breakfast and then the lunch, 'di ba? Okay? And then after breakfast or merienda, between the lunch or between the breakfast, we have again the lunch. After the lunch, merienda, and then meron na naman sa gabi. At minsan pa may midnight snack pa, 'di ba? So all in all, you're going to eat for ilan 'yun? Parang 6 times a day, 'di ba? 3 major meals and then 3 snacks. Ganun katakaw ang mga Pilipino. Ganun ba talaga? In some point meron naman ganun, 'di ba? And of course, ang alam ko lang na normal for a person to eat major meals is only 3 times a day. And I think that is, diba? 3 times a day tayo kumakain. Isa sa umaga, one for the breakfast, and then lunch, and then dinner. So, yun lang yun. Those are the expected things those are the number of meals that we need to eat in a day. And that is para siyang 'di ba expected na yan sa atin. 'Di ba? Hindi naman expected sa atin na kumain tayo ng major meals in one day. So, yan lang sinasabi natin na folk ways. Ano ba yung tradition natin? So, when you say tradition, I mean folk ways. Folk ways is not only certain on culture, on a one culture. Pwedeng ma-practice with different culture even though they have different culture. Pero ang folk ways kasi somewhat innate na yan sa atin. Not innate the day we are born, but it is actually innate based from our culture na tinuro sa atin ng mga grandfathers natin or grandmothers natin. Diba? O like for example, magkaiba naman ng culture natin dito sa, pag-compare mo lang, taga Batangas, taga Manila. No? So they have different culture, mga taga Cavite, di ba? Pero, in terms of eating, they know that kailangan mo at least kumain ng 3 times a day. 3 major meals, di ba? Breakfast, lunch, and then dinner. The same here in Baguio. Alam rin natin na it is normal for us to eat for 3 times a day. So, even though regardless that we have differences in some parts of our culture compared to other cultures, we still have some similarities na somewhat innate sa atin. So, that is now a folk way or folk ways na tinatawag natin. Okay? So, next tayo, still under pa rin ng norms tayo, ha? Number 2 is we have the mores or mores, yung sabi nila. Okay, it is defined as norms people consider vital to their well-being and most cherished values. They are special customs with moral and ethical significance, which are strongly held and emphasize. When you say Morse naman dito, the main difference naman ng Morse sa ating folkways, sa folkway natin, ano bang mga tradition? What is something normal for us to do in part of our own culture? So that is the folkway. However, when you say more or Morse, Mores or Morse are actually the one dictating whether a certain action is actually good or bad. So therefore, when you say more here or mores, more on morality na siya. Remember what again is morality? Knowing what is good and bad. And the next question there is, how do we know that our own action is actually good or bad? So that is now, dyan na pumapasok si Morse natin. And Morse now, based on our own culture, kung ano mang pina-follow mo, or on what part of locality that you're within, you need to follow the Morse, di ba? Kasi yung Morse na yan, it will now dictate the morality of your action, whether your action is good or actually bad. Okay? And of course, when you say Morse, since dinidictate niya whether it is good or bad, he is also suggesting kung ano ang dapat mong gawin. Para kang, okay, since it is dictating, it is actually commanding you what to do and what not to do. Yan ang Morse natin. And therefore, since it is commanding us, based sa culture na yan, it is actually commanding us to do something or not to do something as part of the society, as part of the culture that we are part with, we need to follow it. 'Di ba? Pag may batas tayo na sabi niya, bawal magtupra, 'di ba? Bawal dumura. Ilocano blend. Bawal dumura ng mama or betel nut, 'di ba? Sa batas natin here in Baguio City. So therefore, anong mores ang pa-practice natin? Of course, it is the rules and regulations of Baguio City. Even though you are from different province, like for example, Pangasinan, you came here in Baguio City and then nagmamama ka, 'di ba? And then nagtutupra ka. And remember, ang mores natin, pwede siyang batas. Pwedeng batas yan or pero mamaya, i-explain ko mamaya yung batas na naman. Ang Morse kasi, it is more of unwritten rules naman itong mga to. But anyway, so parang ganun ang example natin. You need to follow what is being dictated by the culture in the form of a more. Okay? And then we have different kinds of mores. Dalawa lang naman yan. Very simple lang yan. The positive more or the positive duty. Of course, sabi ko nga kanina, more is dictating for you to do and not to do. Pag positive yan, ito yung sinasabi niya na ano ang kailangan mong gawin. Ano ang tama na kailangan mong gawin. Okay? It refers to the behavior which must and ought to be done because they are ethically and morally good. Like for example, random examples lang to giving assistance to the poor and needy. Okay. So from this example alone, based on morality, okay lang ba that we give money to the poor? Like for example, mga bata. 'Di ba? Here in Baguio City alone, madami na. We have the badyaw, yung mga badyaw kids, 'di ba? Minsan nanghihingi sila ng pera, pero minsan may mga bata rin na alam mo 'yun, mga based from my own experience, I'm not generalizing all naman. Some of the kids are undisciplined. I do not know if ganun nga talaga ang style nila. Like for example, humingi sila ng pera, hindi mo binigyan. May ano sila, 'di ba? Back comment sila. Or side comment sila. Like for example, wala akong pera, sabihin mo. And then sabihin ng bata, ang damot-damot mo naman. Minsan pang dudurang ka. 'Di ba? That is based from my own experience. Hindi ko naman sinasabi na lahat sila. And then kung minsan binigyan mo sila ng pera, like for example, piso yung barya mo or 5 pesos, 'di ba? Sasabihin nila, ano ba naman ang kuripot mo? Wow, 'di ba? So therefore, parang there are okay, what I'm telling here is that okay naman. For me, it's okay for us to give a assistance or a certain money for these poor people. Pero we also need to look on our own duty for us on helping these people. You need to question yourself, di ba? Do I really help these people every time I give them the money? Di ba? Sa tingin nyo kaya, ganun ba? Kaya natutulungan ba natin talaga sila every time that we give money to them? Does it really help them? Considering yung mga experience ko kasi based from that experience simula noon hindi na ako actually nagbibigay ng mga assistance or pera. Kasi nga we have some side effects. Maybe good effects nito, okay, you are going to help them. Wala silang makain sa isang araw, di ba? Binigyan mo ng pera. So may pambili na silang pagkain nila. Therefore, hindi na sila magugutom ng isang araw. And the bad effect naman yan or parang pangit na pwedeng mangyari, parang they are making this now as a livelihood. So for them, uy, ang dali palang gumawa ng pera. Ay, ang dali palang humanap ng pera, mamalimos ka lang, di ba? Umanak ka ng madami, turuan mo yung anak mo malimos, Within the day, pagbalik nila may mga pera na yan, so may makakain na. So you're now, you're like spoiling these people. So para ka ng, alam mo, hindi ikaw yung nakakaawa eh, sila yung nakakaawa. Kasi ang alam nila, trabaho ang mamalimos, di ba? Kasi nga, it is where you can gain your own money. You're not doing nothing. You're doing something naman. You are asking for money, di ba? But for a job, wala kang ginagawa talaga. Pero nagkakapera ka. So therefore, you're actually making them lazy. So that is now a problem. Di ba? Paano na lang pag lahat ng tao nalimos na? And people are lazy because they know that when you try to beg for money, you're going to have a money. So, of course, maging tamad lahat ng tao. Pag naging tamad lahat ng tao, kawawa ang ating country. Walang tax na binibigay sa gobyerno. Of course, walang pera si gobyerno. Ano pang mga projects that the government could actually give us for the people? Diba? So, yun ang aking namang reason in terms of this example. But still, voluntary naman yan. When si positive duty kasi, it's okay. Pero hindi ka naman talagang minamandate for you to do that thing. Diba? So, it is actually good as part of the more, or it is actually good as part of the culture, but it does not mean that you really need to do that. Pero minsan kasi, some of the mores na meron tayo, minsan talaga, meron yung pinipilit na gawin natin. Depende na yan sa culture natin, or depending on the influence of our own culture on whether or not we try to practice this positive duty or positive mores, di ba? Next here is we have a negative duty. Of course, when you say negative naman, kabaliktaran ng positive natin. Pag sa positive natin, ano yung mga tama na pwede nating gawin? However, when you say negative naman, ano yung mga bagay na hindi natin gagawin as part of our own more or culture? So when you say negative mores, uh, it refers to societal prohibitions on certain acts which must be done because they are not only illegal, but amoral and then unethical. Okay, so when you say negative mores here, it only pertains on what are the things that we are prohibited to do. An example niyan, like yan, incest, di ba? Rape, cannibalism, and then murder. When you say murder, you're killing people. Cannibalism, eating one's meat, di ba? You're eating your own hindi naman relatives, your own, let's say, human beings. So, kinakain mo yung tao rin. Di ba? Aso nga, alam eh. Di ba? If you're kunwari aso, papakainin mo ng karne ng aso, ayaw niya. Aso nga, alam niya kung ano ang tama at mali. Di ba? So, therefore, alam natin na cannibalism is actually wrong. So, it is wrong for someone to eat a human being. Di ba? Rape. For rape naman, because of this quarantine, it is very unfortunate when I was reading the news a while back. In the province of Benguet, medyo tumaas ata yung case ng rape natin. And the rape is incest pa. Incest yung rape natin. Kadamihan ay incest. When you say incest kasi, incest is a sexual intercourse between close relatives. So, ibig sabihin, when I say incest, I think incest is until this fourth civil degree ata yan. Sino ba mga nasa fourth civil degree natin? Like for example, hindi ko naman sinasabi pero ganito ang incest. Examples lang to. When you say incest, it's like a sexual intercourse between the child and then the father, the child and then the uncle, uh, or ano pa ba? Ano pa ba hanggang sa fourth civil degree? Even the cousins, the first cousin is your own fourth civil degree in consanguinity. So those are incest. It is a sexual intercourse between close relatives until the fourth civil degree, if I'm not mistaken. So pag tinawag siyang incest rape, it is actually a rape against a person na rinape niya yung isang relative niya, of course, and that relative is a very close relative to him as well. And when I was reading the news kanina, maybe because of this quarantine, people, hindi ko na alam, I'm not a psychologist naman, but somewhat they are boring. Ewan ko, sila lang magkasama sa bahay. And yun ang siguro nangyayari. And it is very unfortunate to hear some of that news. And yun nga. And I think, and of course, when you say incest rape, rape nga, tabu na yan, di ba? Rape is actually a crime that is not acceptable by the society. Kaya nga pag may rape na kaso yan, I think that is more than, depende naman kung anong penalty niyan. If I think prison mayor, whatsoever, 6 years man yan or 12 years man yan. But anyway, when you say negative more, it is prohibited by society. Rape, sabi nga natin, is somewhat prohibited na kahit hindi mo pa kakilala. 'Di ba? How about na lang yung incest na rape? So, it is a rape conducted or committed by a person sa kanyang relative din. So, mas mabigat na naman yon. Mas mabigat na naman na kaso yon. So, yan ang ating mores natin. When you say positive na yan, ano ang mga tama na gawin natin? And then when I say negative, ano yung mga mali na gawain ng isang mga tao sa isang community natin? Okay? And last but not the least, as part of the norms, is we have the laws naman. When you say laws here, these are formalized, enacted by people, vested with legitimate authority. They are group expectations, which have formal sanction by the state. Very simple lang when you say laws here. Laws are our own ordinances. Basta naisulat yan. It was created by authority. Okay, it was created by a council or a body that has an authority for them to create a law. Of course, sino bang may power sa atin to create laws? We have the government, di ba? Specifically, we have the council. If we are in the city, we have the city council. If we are in the barangay, we have the barangay council or barangay kagawads, di ba? Pag sa munisipyo, municipal councilors. On the setting or on the province naman, we have the board members. For the national, we have the lower house, di ba? We have the House of Representatives, and then upper house, we have the House of the Senate. Di ba? So those are the laws naman as part of the norms. Basta sabi nating batas, ito ay naisulat. It is not unwritten. So ibig sabihin, since it is not unwritten, it is actually written. Pero kahit man nasulat ng batas na to, dumaan yan sa proseso. Okay? So lahat yan, it was studied by these people, these lawmakers. It was debated by these lawmakers. It was modified, all of those things, before a certain law to be created. Okay? So next tayo. So next we have now the ideas, beliefs, and then values. So let's try to define each of these things para malaman natin. So first one, when you say ideas, the non-materials aspects of culture and embody man's conception of his physical and then cultural world, di ba? When you say idea dito, still, it's para siyang the same as norms. What you're expected to do. Idea is abstract din yan. Idea is cannot something that you can see by looking at the face of the person, all of those things, di ba? Idea is somewhat, pag pre-practice na yan, doon mo lang masasabi na idea yan, di ba? Like for example, ano bang mga expected na sa culture natin na you are about to do in the society or on that community? Okay, first one is we have the idea of marriage, di ba? In some cultures, there is what they call a fixed marriage. And ano ba ang marriage natin? Well, of course, when you say marriage as defined by legality, marriage is to make it legal, it is a legal recognition of both person. It must be male and then a female who wanted to be united to each other. So therefore, if someone is married, they are legally bind. So they are united by the law. In the language of law, they are a couple na kailangan they need to respect each other. So meaning of that, if you entered into a marriage, ang mangyayari diyan, bawal ka nang humanap pa ng ibang tao o na makipagrelasyon ka. Kasi nga yan ang marriage natin. It is a legal contract between two parties, a male and then a female. And that contract has no expiration. Baka sabi nila may expiration daw. Okay, so but anyway, idea of marriage in our own culture, somewhat practice, di ba? Pero yung iba naman hindi. Kaya siya sabi nila may mga baak daw na tao, di ba? But regardless of that one, some of the cultures natin look on the importance of marriage. Some cultures naman hindi. Sabi naman na it depends naman yan, di ba? Sabi ng parents mo when you were young, di ba? Wag ka muna mag-boyfriend, wag ka muna mag-girlfriend. Kasi nga, you need to study first. You need to build up your own profession. Kailangan mo na magkatrabaho, kailangan mo magkapera before yung love life na yan. Kasi yung love life na yan, darating at darating yan. Diba? So, they are prohibiting you hanggang naging doktor ka na, hanggang naging lawyer ka na. Ngayong lawyer ka na, doktor ka na, naghahanap ka, wala kang mahanap. Diba? But anyway, still, that is only a joke naman. In some part of the cultures naman, they are actually looking on the importance of marriage. Okay, so they think that marriage will make you richer. Okay, I think especially here, one good example of this one is if you're Chinese, di ba? I do not know if pina-practice pa rin ito ng mga Chinese, but some of my students before told me that they're still practicing the fixed marriage. Because not in the sense that they love each other, kaya nga fixed marriage, di ba? Whether the couple love each other or not, di ba? They need to be married. Di ba? It's good for them if they love each other. But the problem now, what if they do not love each other? Di ba? And some of them, or some of my Chinese students, explained to me that when I say fixed marriage for us, it's not actually in the language of love, but it is on the language of money. And kadamihan daw ng fixed marriage nila, it is a fixed marriage between relatives. Okay, so maybe you would try to question, Sir, bakit kaya? Bakit kaya nila pinapakasalan ang sarili nilang relative? Sabi nila, one good purpose of that or meaning ng marriage between relatives is actually to maintain or to preserve the wealth of the family. Yan pinaka main purpose daw nila. Kasi daw if you are going to marry someone outside your own family, especially if that person that you're going to marry is someone not richer than you or poorer than you, di ba? Ang mangyayari dyan, the family of that person who is poorer than you, of course, hihingi-hingian kanila. Or the money now will be divided. Remember kasi, once you're married, regardless of the amount of money that you have, magiging conjugal property yan or conjugal wealth of the couple. So imagine mo na lang, si girl may perang, ang family niya, let us say may 1 billion ang family niya. How about yung poor guy? Wala. Let us say, 10,000, 100,000 lang. And then, once they married, pag ko-combinein nila yon, pera nilang dalawa. 10 billion plus 100,000 o 10 billion and 100,000. So, in the language of law, that wealth is being divided. Depende na lang, if they're going to marry, may kasulatan na ito lang pera na makukuha mo. Kasi meron din kasing pwede rin ganon. Pero kung walang ganon, magkakaroon ka ng conjugal property now. Or conjugal property, ibig sabihin, in case man na maghiwalay kayo, mahati ang pera natin. A very good example of that one is, of course, we all know naman, do you know Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon? Diba? Or, I mean, the CEO of Amazon. Hindi naman siyang owner talaga. And Jeff Bezos is, I think now, he is the richest person. I think he's around 150 billion for now. Noon, I think that was on 2016 nata or last 2 to 3 years ago, naghiwalay sila ng asawa niya. And then asawa ni Jeff Bezos was actually a former employee of Amazon. Siguro, nagka-developan sila, nag-asawa sila. Pero nung nag-divorce sila, imagine some of the money of Jeff Bezos were given to his ex-wife. And because of that divorce, yung ex-wife ni Jeff Bezos became one of the richest women in the world. So imagine nyo yun, di ba? So yun ang marriage natin in some part. Yeah, it has a negative and positive effect of it, pero ganun talaga. Ano pang mga idea? Idea of an educated person, di ba? Our own parents always wanted us to become educated or successful in life. And we all know, para sabi nila, for us to become successful, kailangan nating mag-aral. Pero it's not actually a guarantee. Pero actually, it's not a guarantee. Pero for me, it's you need to learn, di ba? You need to go to school. You need to be educated. It's not for success naman. It is for you not to be ignorant. Kasi ang hirap maging ignorant sa, di ba? It's very hard to become ignorant, especially in this modern world, di ba? If you're ignorant, you do not know how to use the grammar. You do not know how to speak in English, di ba? You do not know what are the things being happen in your own society. So, ano ka na lang, di ba? So for me, it's not actually for education is not actually for success, but education is for you to develop a certain person. Pero ang conception ng some of our own parents, kailangan mo mag-aral because you need to become successful in the future so that you would become independent. You will have a good life, in other words. Yun ang gusto ng mangyari ng parents natin, 'di ba? And next naman, we have the person's conviction about a certain idea. Beliefs na to, it embodies people's perception of reality, includes the primitive ideas of universe as well as the scientists' empirical view of the world. So when you say belief naman, when you say belief, these are the theories. So ano yung mga pinapaniwalaan natin na somewhat it is not proven. Diba? Or in other words, when you say belief, ito yung mga pamahiin natin in Tagalog. Or in English, we call them as superstitious belief, di ba? Yun ang tawag natin in Tagalog. And here, when you say belief here, pwede siyang, well, of course, belief or pamahiin is dependent on the culture. So it's not actually the same for everyone. Some cultures are practicing different beliefs or different pamahians or superstition beliefs, di ba? All of those things. Like for example, spirits, life after death, superstitions yan, sinasabi ko nga kanina. I will not anymore expound kasi self-explanatory naman na yan. Okay, values naman, abstract concept of what is important and then worthwhile. When you say values, ano yung mga sana, okay, that we need to do for us to be developed? Ano ang importante na gawin natin? Ayan, example, we have nationalism and heroism. Diba? When you say nationalism, it pertains about the loyalty in your own country. So, ibig sabihin, when you say nationalism, you're proud to be a Filipino. Diba? Hindi mo siya dinadown, hindi mo siya sinisiraan. Pero minsan, masyado naman yung pagka-nationalism natin. Diba? Like for example, nanalo si Pacquiao, Pilipino si Pacquiao. We are proud to be a Filipino. Diba? Pero, pag yung isang Filipino naman na nakakahiya ang ginawa niya sa isang international event and it was news with the different parts of the world, di ba? Kawawa naman yung tao, sabihin ng mga Pilipino, ay, ano bang Pilipino? Hindi Pilipino yan. Blah, 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 whatsoever man yan. Okay? So, those are the ideas, beliefs, and then values. Okay, so next naman tayo. We have the material culture here. So we have here a material culture naman. It is defined as the concrete and tangible objects produced and used by man to satisfy his varied needs and wants. It ranges from the prehistoric stone tools and weapons to a sophisticated and modern spaceships and weapons of mass destruction. Okay, when you say material culture from the word itself, ano yung isang bagay na nagawa based from our own culture, di ba? Very simple lang yan. What is something that is made that is tangible? When you say tangible, you can see this one, you can touch this one. That is made based from the need of the people or by the need of that community. Kasi nga, 'di ba, our culture is based on the need that we have. So, sabi ko nga noon, 'di ba? As part of the culture of the people here in Benguet or in Mountain Province, is to eat dog meat, 'di ba? And that's part of their own culture. Nga lang, bakit siya naging part? Kailangan ba siya ng tao? Yes, of course. Kasi nga, based on them, if you're going to eat dog meat, it will make your body warm, di ba? So, ganun siya. Some of our own practices or tradition are based on the need of the people, and that need is based on the environment of the people. Kung malamig dito, anong kailangan mong gawin? Kailangan mong magpainit, di ba? How do you preserve a certain meat? Kasi nga malamig dito, hindi masyadong naaarawan. Unlike on some lowland areas, wherein pwede ka mag-preserve ng isda, di ba? By ibilag pa na yun. Medyo mahirap mag-Tagalog pag ano, di ba? You're going to put a certain, for you to preserve a fish, 'di ba? In some cultures naman or some Ilocanos, some in part of La Union, for them to preserve a fish, they need to uh, put the fish on a certain metal wherein there is a direct sunlight, and it will make those fish dry, 'di ba? And dried fish na siya, and therefore it is now preserved. Kasi nga they have their own availability of sun. However, here in Cordillera, we're in not actually in the whole province of Cordillera, in the whole region of Cordillera. Some part lang, yung medyo malamig ang climate natin. We have a colder climate here. We're in walang masyadong sun. There is no abundance of sunlight. Excuse me. There is no abundance of sunlight. For them to preserve their own food. So ang ginawa nila, instead of using sunlight kasi nga wala, they're using now the salt, 'di ba? Yun ang itag natin and kiniing natin. So yun, when you say material culture here, it pertains on a tool being used by our own lolos and lolas, our own ninunos before, as part of their own culture. Yung mga gabyon, 'di ba? Yung mga yon, yung pag-araro ng baka, those are material culture. Kasi yun, nahahawakan mo yun, at isang bagay yon na ginawa ng ating mga ninuno before, that until now, we are still practicing or using that certain object. Okay? I'm not only pertaining on yung mga traditional, and not only pertaining on a traditional objects that they have created, the stones. No, I'm also pertaining with technologies that we have created. Kasi nga, even the computers that we use, the cell phones that we use, those are the material culture. Diba? Nagkataon lang that these cell phones or these materials or objects were created during our own generation. So as part of the culture of the present generation, we have the rise now of technology. And still, that technology is part of the material culture. Diba? Pero, based on our own history, there are two types of material culture. It is known as the artifact and then the fossil. When you say artifact, yan, simple man-made tools and objects such as naphthalene, which presents evidence of an ancient culture. Pero, ano ba ang difference? Or what do you think is the difference between an artifact and then fossil? Many of the students kasi are confused between the difference of fossil and then artifact. Some of them believe that when you say fossil and artifact, they're actually the same. Kasi nga, it is preserved. Ito, basta nahuhukay daw yan sa lupa, artifact na yan or fossil. But actually, there is a big difference. So, similarity nila, it is part of the material culture. Hindi naman sa material culture siya. Kasi it is not actually made. When you say artifact here, meaning of that is it is something that is made by the culture, or in other words, we call that one as the remnants of the culture. Okay, so ang pagsabi nating artifact, it is the remnants of the culture. Ano ba ang remnants? So very simple lang when you say remnants, ito yung mga bagay na ginawa ng tao before sa ating culture na nakikita natin or it was actually discovered ngayon lang. So like for example, ano ba yung example ng remnants natin? Remnants ng culture natin, na medyo nakalimutan na. If you try to go in Egypt, 'di ba? Yung mga yung mga we have these historians who are trying to look for evidences about the life of Egyptians before, because they believe that Egyptians were the most advanced people in our own history. So yun, naguhukay sila until such time na nakahanap sila ng mga tools na gamit ng mga Egyptians before. Like for example, the use of the wheel, di ba? The use of the rocks. O yun, the Great Pyramid of Giza, di ba? Those are artifacts. So, nahahawakan mo siya, it was made by the people. So, it is called as the remnants of the culture. However, when we say fossil naman, it pertains now on the remnants of the living. Gets nyo? Remnants of the living. So, what do we say? What do we mean when we say remnants of the living? Very simple. Ano bang mga examples ng remnants ng living natin? Yung mga dinosaurs natin before, di ba? They have their own fossils. When I say fossils, ito yung mga pwede siyang buto. And alam natin, when we say fossil, kadamihan ay buto. Di ba? Kasi yung buto, hindi siya na-decompose even for how many years, for 100,000 of years, still, kahit na ibaw niya sa lupa, buo pa rin siya. However, yung alam naman natin, yung skin natin, our meat, it will be decomposed. Kaya, hindi na siya fossil. Kasi nga, wala na siya in other words. Pero, when you say fossil here, it's not only limited on the bones. Kasi nga, alam naman natin na bones ay medyo matibay. It can preserve itself for how many years, di ba? Basta hindi lang ito masira. And pwede rin siyang buhok or pwede rin siyang isang animal na. Kasi pwede mo siyang i-preserve for how many years. Like for example, yung mga bees or yung mga lamok before, they were preserved by a certain, may parang ano siya, yung liquid na parang honey. Minsan na-stuck sila sa ganon, and then yung body nila, it is still preserved. So, yung mga galamay nila, meron pa, hindi pa na-decompose. Kasi nga, para siyang na-mold sa isang, para siyang, ano bang tawag nun? Parang honey base nga siya. Basta yun. Diba? And example of that one, example ng ating mga artifacts din, in Egypt, if you know about the Rosetta Stone, alam niyo ba yun? Rosetta Stone was actually it was discovered by France before in 1799. But there was a war before between the Britain and then the French. Okay, so ganito yun. The Rosetta Stone came from Egypt. It is an artifact. And it is a very important artifact of Egypt. But it is not located in Egypt. Kasi nga, it was discovered in 1799 by the French government. At nung nakita nila yan, inuwi nila yan sa France. Ngayon, in 1801, nagkaroon ng gera between the France and then Great Britain. Nung natalo ang France, kinuha nila yung Rosetta Stone na yan. So therefore, the Rosetta Stone is now located in Great Britain or in UK. And of course, Egypt is trying to claim the Rosetta Stone. Pero hanggang ngayon, wala pa rin. Madami. We have a lot of artifacts that were discovered in Egypt. Kaya sinabi nila, yung Egyptians were the most advanced people before. Nung nagkaroon ng mga before pang enlightenment, they believe that Egyptians are very good. They have very good intelligence, di ba? They are the earliest civilized people before, and so on. Another one that was discovered in Egypt, pero hindi na sa Egypt. We have the Queen Nefertiti bust. When I say bust, para siyang ulo lang. Okay? So para siyang ulo lang na parang it can be made up of gold, can be made up of silver or a stone. And it was discovered in Germany in 1912 by Ludwig Borchardt. Okay? But still, hindi pa rin siya nakalocate sa Egypt. So, for your information, Egypt is trying to claim a lot of artifacts that were discovered in Egypt. And many of those artifacts were located in Europe. Kasi nga, we all know naman as part of colonization, some parts of Europe colonized the different parts of the Middle East, including Egypt, and some of those artifacts were obtained by these countries. And sana naman maibalik sana itong mga artifacts na to sa Egypt. Who is the right person to keep those artifacts? From the mere fact that it came from Egypt, di ba? Next, letter E, we have the symbols now. It refers to an object, gesture, sound, color, or design that represents something other than itself. So, very good example of symbols natin. Pwede siyang word, pwede rin siyang action. Di ba? Cross of Christianity, when you sign off the cross, di ba? It is a sign for Christian. Hindi naman sa Christianity naman. Especially in Roman Catholic, we have the signing of the cross. Pero yung iba, even though they're Christian, they do not believe in the signing of the cross. I will not anymore name those religions. Basta, those are some examples of symbols natin. Di ba? And then in some culture, symbols are different from each other. Kung sa atin ang meaning ng ganito ay okay, di ba? Yung iba naman, ang alam nila ang ganito, pera, or yung iba, I think in Japan, you're not allowed to do this one. Kasi I think that is a taboo for Japanese people. I do not know kung what is the meaning of that for Japanese. Even in Japanese, di ba, or in Japan, here in America and then here in the Philippines, it is okay for us to give tip, di ba? Tips sa mga waiter natin or sa mga taong nag-deliver ng isang bagay sa atin. Like for example, may barya kang 20, binibigyan mo sila. And okay yun. And it is somewhat acceptable. At gusto rin naman nung mga nabibigyan mo. However, in Japan, it's like parang you're disrespecting the person daw. If you're giving a tip to a certain person, it's like you're telling to that person that ang baba, di ba? Your profession is not equal to my profession. Okay? Parang mas mababa yung profession mo sa aking profession. So like for example, you're a lawyer and then you order the food and then someone delivered the food. Now, if you try to give money to the delivery person, it's like you're telling daw that the job of the person delivering this food is somewhat lower than your own profession, which is to be a lawyer, which is not supposed to be daw. So parang ganun yung culture nila. I cannot judge naman their own culture kasi nga culture nila yan. And of course, they cannot also judge our own culture. Basta sinasabi ko lang, we have different symbols, we have different practices and cultures. Diba? Okay, so next naman, aspects of culture naman tayo. We're now done with the components of culture. First, we have cultural relativism. States that culture differ so that a cultural act, trait, idea has no meaning or function by itself but has a meaning only within its cultural setting. So when you say cultural relativism, this is the open-mindedness of culture. Ito yung you are being open-minded. You know how to relate your own culture to other cultures. So ikaw yung taong para siyang kabaliktaran ng racism kasi when you say cultural relativism. So you believe that all of the culture are equal. Okay? So walang culture na mas mataas sa isang culture. Even though you're practicing this one, this culture is not practicing, okay lang yan. Because all of you are equal. So yung culture mo hindi mas mataas sa isang culture. Yun ang cultural relativism. Diba? The equality of culture. As much as possible sana, ganyan ang pinapractice ng lahat ng tao. Pero hindi, di ba? Minsan hindi talaga ganon. Next, we have the culture shock. The feeling of disbelief, disorganization, frustration, one experiences when he encounters cultural patterns or practices which are different from his. Very good example of culture shock is ako. Okay? So I am from Baguio City or specifically in Benguet. Di ba, if you're going to observe here in Benguet, sa mga politicians natin, they're like a normal person. Minsan pa nga parang they are more down to earth than a certain normal person. Makita mo si a certain politician, si governor, si congressman, just walking down the street,
Ang suot niya lang baong, suot niya ay slippers lang, naka-t-shirt lang, and he's walking alone on the street and no one recognizes him. Diba? Or meron man, licer lang and whatsoever. Wala siyang bodyguard. Diba? Hindi siya takot maglakad. Wala. So, meaning here, para silang safe. Safety sila in terms of the public. However, when you try to go in lowland areas, si barangay kagawad nga lang, si barangay captain, di ba? Dadaan lang sa isang barangay. Ang dami ng bodyguards. Isa sa harap, isa sa likod, side by side. Meron pa sa northeast, sa northwest, southeast. So, palibot niya, bodyguards. Di ba? And for me, it's like a culture shock. Kasi hindi ako sanay sa ganun eh. Kasi when you say politicians here, they're like normal persons. When you say normal persons, di ba? They're like the same with us. They are living with us. Di ba? So, parehas ang living natin. So, yun ang mga culture shock na experience natin. Not only here, pero yung some of them are also coming here in Baguio and then nagugulat din sila. Na bakit pag ganun, si congressman, nandyan lang yun lang si congressman, walang bodyguard, di ba? So, yun ang mga culture shock na ating mga na-experience. Okay, so next naman, ethnocentrism. When you say ethnocentrism, this is now the opposite of cultural relativism. Sabi nga natin kanina, when you say cultural relativism, it pertains about the equality of all of the cultures. However, when you say ethnocentrism here, you're now looking on the superior culture than the other. So, you believe na may mas mataas na culture compare sa isang culture. In other words, para na siyang racism. Sa tingin mo na mas mataas ang mga Amerikano sa mga Pilipino. Kaya pag pumunta ka sa Amerika, if you have watched, di ba, in some news feed or in some Facebook, some of the white men or some white, mga babae pa ngayon, parang napapanood ko sa Facebook, that they're, yun, parang they are shouting to a certain Asian person, di ba? May Filipino pa nga ata akong napanood noon before na they are shouting, why are you here? Ang lakas-lakas daw ng boses ng Pilipino, whatsoever. Bakit daw siya nagsasalita ng Pilipino? Nandun naman siya sa Amerika. Yun, parang, yun na. It's a ethnocentrism now. When you say ethnocentrism, you believe that your own culture or your own race is higher than the other. Excuse me. And we have here is xenocentrism. The idea that what is foreign is best and that is one's lifestyle, products, or ideas are inferior to those others. Very good example of xenocentrism, yung mga Filipino values natin. Di ba? Basta Filipino, ganito, okay. This is a conception for a Filipino. Basta alam natin kung imported yung product, made in America, made in Germany, made in UK, original yan, ba? And most likely we always wanted to have an imported product, 'di ba? Sa tingin mo may balikbayan ka, 'di ba? Or you have a OFW relative, tito, tita, pagdating nyo dito, bilhan nyo nga ako ng Nike na Air Jordan 1. Kasi pag dito ako sa Pilipinas bibili, hindi ko alam kung local yan o hindi. Kasi pag dyan daw, made in America. Di ba? Well, actually, parang ganun ang mindset natin. Di ba? We are now adapting the products or we are adapting the culture of other cultures. Very good example of xenocentrism as well. Yung K-pop natin. Di ba? Many Filipinos are supporting. Actually, parang Filipinos pa nga ang number one supporters ng K-pop, di ba? Compared to Koreans mismo, di ba? So, those are examples of xenocentrism. I will make it fast na para matapos to within the hour lang. Next is we have the noble savage mentality. When you say, ano bang meaning yan? The evaluation of one's culture, that of others based on the romantic notion that the culture and way of life of the primitives or other simple cultures is better, more acceptable, and more orderly. So, yan yung sinasabi natin kanina. When you say noble savage, it is a traditional culture which is observed. Parang you are now looking on a certain culture and you're trying to compare. Actually, self-explanatory na yan. Subculture, the smaller group which develops norms, values, beliefs, and special languages which make them distinct from the broader society. Example of subculture is we have yung Kangkanay at Ibaloy natin. We have the Igorot, di ba? The tribe, exactly the tribe, basta the people of the mountains or Cordillera, let us say Cordilleran. We have a lot of subgroups in Cordillera. In Benguet alone, ang dami na, di ba? We have Kangkanaay, Ibaloy, and then we have Kalanguya, some part of Tinok, some part of Ifugao, and then Benguet, di ba? So yung mga subculture natin. So next naman, counterculture or contraculture, the subgroups whose standards come in conflict. So the keyword here is there is now conflict with the opposed and the conventional standards of the dominant culture. A very good example of counterculture is yung ano ba ang dominant culture natin in terms of religion? So we have the Roman Catholic, ba? And for Roman Catholic, it is okay for you to eat blood kasi nga wala namang nakasaad sa Bible that you are not allowed to eat blood. Ang nakasaad lang sa Bible or what is written on the Bible is that life is blood. And there is no such thing that a person must not eat blood. Kasi nga life is blood. Walang ganun. Ang alam lang natin, life is blood according to the Bible. Ngayon, some of the Roman Catholics, it is okay for them to eat blood. Kasi nga maybe they interpret it as since life is blood, you need to eat blood to make your life longer. Diba? However, there is now a conflict which is on the practice naman ng Jehovah Witnesses natin or we have Iglesia ni Cristo. So for them, they are not allowed to eat blood since blood is life. So if therefore you're eating blood, you're like taking someone's life, di ba? So parang ganun naman yung interpretation nila. So they are now in conflict to each other, di ba? Excuse me. Okay, so last na to. Culture lag is the gap between material and non-material culture. Very good example of culture lag is yung gap ng ano natin. Compare mo, yung lola mo or parents mo, compare with you as a millennial. Di ba? Ilang turo mo na kay mama mo, kay papa mo, ito ang gawin mo para pumunta ka sa Facebook. Click mo tong color blue na to. Gusto mong mag-message sa akin, i-click mo yung messenger na yan. Ilang beses mo nang tinuro, 100 times mo nang tinuro, hindi niya pa rin naiintindihan. And that is a culture lag. Diba? That is now the gap between you and your own parents. But I'm not telling naman, I'm not generalizing all. Some naman. Kadamihan nga, pero ganun, di ba? Especially yung mga lolo't lola mo, di ba? Next, cultural diversity. The differences and then variety of beliefs, practices, values, and meanings to each culture, universal by the members of a society or different cultural group. Yan. I will not anymore expound. Self-explanatory na yan. Universal patterns of culture, the broad areas of social living found in social societies, the features and elements common to all cultures rather than to the special culture traits. So, of course, okay, sige, explain ko na nga. What's the difference of cultural diversity and then universal patterns? Ganito yan. When you say cultural diversity, one very good example of that one, ito. You try to compare Christian, Muslim, and then religion of Hinduism. So we have three. Christianity, Muslim, and then Hinduism. So for Christian, you're allowed to eat pork and then you're allowed to eat ano ba? Yes, you're allowed to eat pork, di ba? However, for Muslim, you're not allowed to eat pork. Pwede sa Christian, bawal sa Muslim. Hinduism, pwede ba to eat pork? Yes, you're allowed to eat pork, but you are not allowed to eat beef naman. So, Christian, pwedeng kumain ng pork and beef. Muslim, you're not allowed to eat pork, but you're allowed to eat beef. For Hinduism, you're allowed to eat pork, but you are not allowed to eat beef. Diba? So for Muslim, magbaliktad naman. You're not allowed to eat pork, but you're allowed to eat beef. So there is now a cultural diversity. When you say cultural diversity, what is now the difference between us? Diba? However, when you say universal pattern naman, what do you think is universal to all of the culture? So, kanina, when you say cultural diversity, it pertains about the differences. From the word itself, diverse. And then universal, what is the common thing that is the same with all of the culture? Very simple. Christian, you're allowed to eat chicken. Muslim, you're allowed to eat chicken. Hinduism, you're allowed to eat chicken. So, that is the same to all of the culture. Okay? So, yun lang. Ganun ang difference. That is now the difference of cultural diversity and then universal patterns of culture. And that ends the lesson number 1. If you have any question based from our own lecture, you may contact me through my Facebook account every time our own meeting. Please contact me with our specified schedule. If our schedule is from 8 to 9, 8 to 9:30, doon mo lang ako i-message. Kasi nga, I'm also replying to all of the students that is within my time only. Para hindi naman unfair sa kanila. So, thank you for listening for lesson number 1.